What up, party people? Matt Lehman, the owner of SpatulaCityRecords.com for all of your vinyl needs. So today we're going to do a product review of the Record Pi record flattener. I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I've been running this through the paces and making sure that I've kind of got to figure out how all of it works, and I want to know every aspect of it before I actually did this video, because this is one of the things that I'm actually known for. One of my better, more watched videos outside of fixing scratches is my Orb record flattener. And originally when I was thinking about doing the product review on this, I wanted to do a standalone review of just this product and not talk about the record vinyl flat or the Orb record flattener. But I kind of feel like it's a disservice to do it to this product, because I don't think that the creators of this are going to argue is they were really trying to take the vinyl flat and bring it up to date and to make it a little better product. So I don't think it's fair to not compare it, but I'll try to stay away from it as much as I can. So first of all, let's get into it. So the Record Pi, what is it? It is basically two pieces of metal, and you take this off. Put your record in there. Actually, before you do that, Record Pi sends you the felt pads, and I'll get into why these are like this in just a second. And you put your record in there, you put another one on there, you put the top back on it, screw it in, oops, screw it on, and then you put it in your handy dandy little flattener. And you turn it on, beep, it has a box here, and then you let it flatten. Obviously that's a lot quicker demonstration of what it is. This is actually pretty cool. This is their target gauge, or their thermostat, and you can watch this from your phone. It's adaptable. It goes into your Wi-Fi, your house Wi-Fi, and you can turn it on and you can watch it to make sure that your actual temperature and your target temperature are close, and you can adjust it with your phone. That is very, very cool. Personally, I think it's a little bit of an overkill. I don't really need that. And my biggest problem with this is I would much rather have a timer on it. There is no timer with this. You can obviously watch it on your phone. You can put a timer on your phone. Now, I've talked with the owners of these, and I did some extensive conversations back and forth with the owners of Record Pi, and they're really good people, and they're really doing their best at making this product everything it can be. They want to do a Facebook page and talk about times and temperatures, which I'll get to in a minute. And they said that the cool thing about it is since it's an app, they can go in and adjust it. And I haven't looked at it in a while. I probably should have before I started this video, but they were going to put a timer on it. I don't know if they've gotten around to it or not. And part of the reason for that is there's some caveats with this. As to how it works. Like, you have to put the record in before it gets up to temperature, so then you kind of have to adjust your temperature. The biggest issue with this is, much like the vinyl flat, is it's very tedious. It's very time consuming, because you really have to pay attention. Start a record at say 2 hours, and if it doesn't work, move it up to 2.5 hours. If that doesn't work, you can adjust the temperature a little bit here and there. But it does work. It works very, very well. It's a very good product. It's just a little tedious compared to, say, the Orb. My probably biggest beef with the Record Pi is this. There are so many cables with this thing that it needs its own docking station. And I get it. Part of that is necessary, I assume, because you have obviously this first little wire goes into the back of the Record Pi, and is a thermostat, so it knows what temperature it has. So obviously that's necessary. And then it's got the power cord for the thermostat, and then it's got the power cord for the heating element. So yeah, but I feel like there's got to be a better way than this, because there's no real way to get around this unless, I mean, you have to have a designated spot for it, and you have to hide all these wires and run them in under something, and to me this is just a mess. But it is what it is. It's a minor problem. And then the heating element, I haven't pulled this thing apart. I suspect it's very similar to the vinyl flat itself. Uses a Sunbeam heating pad, and then it has a black bag in it. And obviously the reason they did that is it's a whole lot easier to buy a ton of products from Sunbeam than to have a company produce a heating pad for you. So I assume, but Record Pi actually, either they went in and rewired stuff or had somebody create their heating element. So that's probably a step up. I don't know exactly what they did, but it does heat more evenly than the vinyl flat. My biggest problem with the vinyl flat, which is why I switched to the orb, was because the vinyl flat was not temperature controlled, and it would fluctuate horrifically and incredibly wide swings, and you couldn't really tell. And they sent you a glass temperature thermometer, and that didn't really work very well. You're supposed to put it in the bag, and it just didn't work very well. And I loved the vinyl flat at first. The first one that I had was one of the original ones, and I felt that that heating element was much more temperature controlled. It was a very even temperature. But when mine started to die after using it for every day for years, I went and bought the next one, and it was horrible. And then I also bought a third one just to see if it was the difference, and I noticed side by side, same records, like 2 record sets, I put them both in, and one of them would just warp out and burn out, and the other one would be fine. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. And then I do the same thing, and then the next record set would be the complete opposite. And that was the biggest problem with the vinyl flat, is that there was no way to gauge the temperature and no way to control it. So Record Pi has solved that. You can watch the temperature, and you can keep it where you want it. You can change it whenever you want. So it's really, really cool, and it works really, really well. The problem with it is it's tedious, and that's part of the problem. Is vinyl is tedious. Vinyl is, every company that makes records, every plant that produces records, there are different elements in every record. So you could get a 180 gram record that is made with 10 different products or 10 different elements or 10 different whatever you want to call it, and you could get another 180 gram that's made with 15. It just depends on what they put in it. And then color vinyl is completely different. It's a different weight, it's a different texture, it's a different flexibility. So and I know that I talked to the owners, and they had said Record Pi that they're working on putting a Facebook group together where they'll go in and say, okay, look, Electra records that weigh 120, put it in for 2 hours at 130 degrees. Start there. That's important. And I had a huge sheet for the vinyl flat when I had it. I had probably 4 pages filled of Doors records or Fleetwood Mac or whatever, and I would say, okay, this one weighed 132 grams, put it in for 4 hours, and this was it. And it was really, really necessary. With the orb, you don't have to do that. The orb, you just put it in, and it works at any record, any weight, and the only thing it doesn't really do is it does 180 gram records, but they can be real hit or miss. You usually have to run them through 2 or 3 times. 200 gram records are very miss. The orb wasn't built for 200 gram records. However, the Record Pi is fantastic at 180 grams and 200 gram records. So if you are one of the poor people that have bought records that are the new releases and they're 180 gram or 200 gram and they have issues and they come in cupped, this is your fix for it. And it does, like I said, it does a great job. I really like what it does all the way around, other than the cables and stuff like that. So it comes with the directions. It's really easy to use, and they are very easy to get a hold of. I just went back and forth with them on Instagram, and if you are someone that needs a lot of records flattened, or buys a lot of records, or has a lot of records that have been poorly stored, and you want them to be fixed without having to wait a month while putting it in a folder or trying to put it in the oven or putting it on a bookshelf, then the Record Pi is a very good investment. It's much, unfortunately, I hate to talk bad about vinyl flat because for years I was a huge fan of it, but this is certainly better than vinyl flat. I think it runs anywhere, they run sales on it where it's $250 with everything, and then off sale I think it's like $350, maybe $400, whereas that's pretty comparable to the vinyl flat. If I'm not mistaken, the vinyl flat bag, I think it runs about $250 with everything and shipping. So they are about the same price, but this is by far much, much better product. And obviously, if you can't afford an orb, which is $1,000 or $1,100 or $1,200, depending on where you're getting it, then this is the machine to go to. I don't think that I think it falls flat to the orb because, again, the orb walks away. You can walk away from it. You just turn it on and walk away, and you hear it go beep. 4 hours later, you come back and your record's flat. And you don't have to mess around with temperature. You don't have to mess around with the time. You don't have to look at it and see what's going on. So the orb obviously is a winner on that. But again, the Record Pi was never designed to compete with the orb. They were trying to give a product that the normal person or the average record collector could afford and could fix their record. So kudos to them. Having said that, I have run dozens, if not probably 50 or 100 records through this. There are flaws with it. Number one, I highly recommend using their felt rings. At first, I didn't use the felt rings because I don't use them on my orb. The orb came with them, but what I've found is that it works better without the felt rings, and I never had any issues with it, so I just stopped using the felt rings because the felt tends to pick up. We have a lot of cats, and so the felt tends to pick up cat hair, it picks up everything, so then I got to clean it off every time I use them, and I was happy that the orb didn't need them. But the reason you want to use these is, like I said, I started using this without the felt inserts, and I fried out a couple records. Hang on one second, I'll show you what a fried out record is. Probably should have had this prepared already. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but a fried out record. Let's see if I can kick over here. This isn't fried as bad as it could. There it is. Okay, so if you see, there's a bunch of dents in here. You can definitely see it on the edges a lot, right along in there when you run around it. This is a fried record. This means that this record has seen some heat. It's heat damage, and there's some more of it. Right in here. You can see all that pitting. That is heat damage. This will be a coaster. If anybody's looking for a Black Sabbath coaster, this will be available in a couple of weeks. That is from heat damage. That didn't happen from this. That actually happened from something else. It had a really bad edge warp, so I was testing different things. I'm always trying to figure out ways to fix edge warps and heat damage and stuff like that. So there are a lot of trial and error, and most of it's error. So if you don't use those, these get really hot, or hotter than without the felt. Obviously, the felt acts as an insulator and doesn't do that. I don't have that issue with the orb, and I wonder, and this is my own conjecture, my own theory, because the vinyl flat is the same thing. It's two pieces of metal with felt pads as the record pie, whereas the orb is actually two pieces of glass. It's a sandwich. It looks like a panini press, like a large panini press, and it's two pieces of glass. And I wonder if the heat is transferred through the glass a little cleaner or more evenly on the glass than it is on the metal, or it holds temperature better. It may be the heating or the element in the orb is more even than a heating pad, because both of these use heating pad. I don't know. It's just a conjecture on it, but I noticed that. And then when I started using the felt pads after I burned a couple records, I never had that issue again. So I highly recommend definitely use the felt pads with them. Now you may be asking yourself, why would I want the felt pads? Part of the reason is, as I said, it helps even out the heat on it. But the other thing, and I didn't know this until I saw somebody else do a video on the orb, and he kind of cut it down a little bit, because he said there were people that were saying they could never get it perfectly flat. There was always still a little tiny bit of a cup on the record if they put it through the orb. I've never had that issue, but apparently he seems to think it's a much bigger issue. Now, when I say I've never had that problem, I'm only one person, but at the same time, I use the orb 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I have used it for over 2 years and never had a record. I've had a couple records that didn't come out perfectly, but at the same time, I've also had records that didn't come out at all. Records are records. Some of them you cannot fix. It could just have just a little bit of a cup. I've had records like this that just had a little bit of a cup, and I was like, oh, that's an easy fix. And I've had to run it like 10 times, and I've never been able to get it out. I don't know why. So it may be some of the impurities or whatever is inside the vinyl that they use to make it. But for some reason, some records just cannot be fixed. A perfect example of that is picture discs. If you know what a picture disc is what it is. It has a picture, what it sounds like. It has a picture, and then they press vinyl around it, so it's laminated inside the vinyl. Now, whatever that process is, or whatever the picture is, I don't know if it's a special picture that they use so that it doesn't warp out or do anything. I cannot fix picture discs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and I haven't had a whole lot of current picture discs. I just don't see them a lot. but I suspect it's the same thing. And that was one of the things I asked Record. I talked with them about before I bought one. I wanted to know if they could fix picture disc because I could not do it. In fact, if I put it in the orb or I put it in anything, if it was lightly cupped, it would literally come out like this. It got every time you put a picture disc in a flattener, it gets way worse. So I asked them, and they said, we haven't tried it. Do you have a picture disc you can send us? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I sent them one that I didn't really care a whole lot about, and they had the same problem. And when they came out of the Record Pi, it did this. And they said, we tried everything we possibly could, all of our tricks, because they have tricks. I have tricks on these too. If you buy one of these and you want to know some tricks on it, let me know. And same thing with the orb. I have tricks that make it work a little better. But they said no matter what we did, it always came out worse. And we pulled one apart, and as we expected, it was just 2 pieces of vinyl, clear vinyl, sandwiched between a picture. So whatever's going on in that picture, once it curls, and I'm shocked that a piece of paper or a photograph, double-sided photograph, could hold vinyl in that shape without, because vinyl realistically wants to go back to its shape. If you have records that were stored like this, and you got a whole stack of them, and you get the bottom ones and they're cupped out, generally you can put them on a shelf and put them in put them in between something hard and just leave them alone. They will go back to what they want. They want to go back to flat. So it's hard for me to believe, obviously that's not true with everything, but most records, if they haven't been damaged or seen a lot of heat or whatever, they want to go back to flat. So I was surprised that a picture or a piece of double-sided paper could do that to vinyl. But for whatever reason, I don't know that the process is that it doesn't work. So back to the original point, sorry that was kind of a tangent. The other reason that you use these, and these actually are a little bit bigger, there's some smaller ones that come with the orb. The guy that I was talking about that had a video that kind of poo-pooed the orb or how its ability to flatten. I didn't know this. Now I know that obviously the ends of records they stick out a little bit. They're a little bit wider than the vinyl itself, and I just assumed that was part of the pressing process, and it was kind of there to keep the needle in place. What he said, I don't have any reason to doubt him, is that it was originally designed for record stackers. When they stacked, they needed that so that they could find the next record and were able to put it down. And because of that, he said, you can never get a record truly flat on the orb because, number one, the label is whatever, 1/100 of a millimeter, 200 millimeter, whatever, thicker than the playing section, as is the dead wax on the outside. So it's a little bit thicker vinyl and then a little bit thicker, so when you press it, sandwich it, the sandwich can't actually get to the playing part, it's just getting to the label and the edge. Again, I've never had that issue, and it's such a minor number, but at the same point it makes sense. So that's another reason why you want to use these felt pads, is because the felt is thicker than the label, so now the vinyl flat is going against the actual playing area. So that was interesting. That was something I hadn't learned. I didn't realize that edge lip there was for record stackers. By the way, don't use record stackers. They just eat your records up. Other than that, I think again, it's a good product. It's very good at what it does. If you have thousands of records to flatten in a lot of time, then go for it. And you don't want to spend $1,000 on the orb. This is your go-to. You're going to have to pay attention to it and figure it out and trial and error and figure out where the sweet spot is. My sweet spot on this is generally right around 130 degrees. Most records won't start to warp out unless they see 130 degrees of direct heat, and that doesn't mean in a car. It can sit in a car because sitting in a car is not direct heat, it's ambient heat. It's like an oven. So it needs direct heat to 130 degrees. And that's usually where I start. Sometimes I'll go up to 135. Sometimes it really depends. And this is all of my notes are for LPs. I generally and very, very rarely deal with 45s. Now 45s are going to be a whole nother monster. They're going to be a lot. You're going to want a lot cooler temperature. I can't imagine a 45 could handle 130 degree heat, because if you even show it to the sun, they start to melt. So that's for LPs, is generally right around 130. Now I say that because I've tested a lot of them. You might want to start at 125 and get used to it and figure out where you're at, 120, 125, somewhere in that area. And again, if you have a really flimsy record, not Dynaflex, because Dynaflex really holds up well. Dynaflex labels from the 70s, they are monsters. They hold up to anything. It's really hard to heat damage them. I know, I've tried. But if you get a real flimsy record, probably 80s metal is usually pretty cheap vinyl. You might want to go a little bit lower on it. But so that's it. The Record Pi, 2 thumbs up for me. I think it works great. I will hold on to this and I will use it for 180 and 200 gram records. And then if I get a slew of records in and I need to go through it, because I'll buy record collections that are warped out because it doesn't bother me, because I know that I can fix them. It doesn't cause damage, and people are going to argue that it causes damage to the grooves. It does not cause damage to the groove. It does not cause damage to the playback. It doesn't touch the grooves or the, and actually it's not the grooves. It's more of the peaks of the groove, because the groove is way down below. But the only this warped out, or this heat damage record, this Black Sabbath record, you will hear those pittings. You will hear them. If it's heat damage like on an edge in one spot, when it goes around, you'll hear it go whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. If it's pitted like this, you will hear all sorts of. It depends on the type of music, but you'll hear the needle bounce, and it'll go, and you'll hear the music go up and down. It may cause it to skip. This isn't damaged enough to cause it to skip, but it will actually. You'll hear it. This record is destroyed. It was pretty rough to begin with, but it actually had like I said, it was an edge warp. I don't even think you can find it anymore. I think I successfully flattened the edge warp, but destroyed the record. But so that's it. As always, thanks for watching. Spatula City Records, buy 9 get 1 free. All of our records are ultrasonically cleaned. Sometimes they're even flattened, and free shipping on orders of $50 or more. Thanks again for watching. Hope you guys have a happy New Year.